Today, we become legends.
Every SMITE God's Pokemon typing, let's go. Achilles, fighting and normal. Fighting for his physical combat affinity and part normal because he's a half-human demigod. Agni, fire. Pretty obvious one, man has two heads but one typing as one of the most fiery gods SMITE has to offer. Amuzan, bug. You could argue for bug grass or bug poison, but I think mono bug fits in pretty well. He is the bee, after all. Arpoash, ghost poison. Man throws corpses to do his bidding and empties crypts of wraiths, obvious ghost type, while I think poison fits nice as a secondary typing because of his fleeting breath and links to decay. Amaterasu, fighting fire. Fighting for obvious reasons, and fire mainly because she's associated with the sun and the heavens. If there was a light type, she would be that, but fire is the closest we have in Pokemon. Anher, ground normal. Normal because he's basically just a lion guy, many standard animals exist as normal types in Pokemon, and ground for his shifting sands and Egyptian themes. Anubis, ghost dark. Ghost because he's god of the dead and associated with mummification, and dark to add the extra creepy vibe to him. Alquang, water dragon. An easy choice, god of the eastern seas, has a water decoy, and well, is a dragon. If you could have three types, he would also be electric, but I think water and dragon override his electric themes as more prominent. Aphrodite, fairy normal. Pink, associated with doves and healing, pretty obvious fairy type. I have normal tacked on there as well because she's a pretty normal human-like character. Apollo, normal. Would be sound type if that existed, but it doesn't, so just normal for him being a human. Also, by the way, when I say a character is just being a human, I'm not referring to their actual mythology here. I know they're gods, I'm just mean like their general design, and SMITE is just a basic human. Arachne, bug poison. Everyone's favourite early root typing. She's a spider, I think by default that makes her bug poison, but she also has an ability literally called venomous bite. Ares, steel fire. Fighting was also an option here for his affinity for warfare, but I think steel fire fits him best. Man spams chains and fights with a sword for steel, and spits flames from his shield for fire. Nuff said. Artemis, normal grass. Normal for being a pretty standard human, you're gonna hear that a lot in this video. Grass because of her vine traps, connections to nature, and ability to summon a boar. Artio, normal grass. These pretty much correspond nicely to her two forms. Bear form being normal type, and druid form being grass with its vines and nature themes. Athena, normal. Pretty basic human commander type, would be normal, but I guess there's some small argument for fighting on a lot of these. Atlas, electric fairy. Okay, so don't hate me for this, it was very difficult to type Atlas, but hear me out. Electric because many science-like Pokemon are electric, and Atlas has a lot of sciencey abilities named like Gamma Ray Burst, Kinetic Charge, Gravity Pull, that kind of stuff. And while fairy is more justifiable, it's still not concrete. The reason for this is his association with the cosmos, which is often given to fairy type in Pokemon. It seems wrong to type him this way, but the reasoning is fairly solid, I feel. Awilix, normal dark. Standard human for normal, goddess of the moon for dark type. Baba Yaga, dark poison. There's a small argument for fire here because of her ultimate's witch firebolts and the explosive nature of her three, but I feel dark for her mischievous nature and Slavic roots alongside poison for her potion brewing make more sense than fire. Bacchus, normal poison. Not much precedent to go off here since Nintendo would never allow an alcoholic Pokemon, but poison fits that best alongside the generic human normal typing. Bakasura, fighting dark. Fighting for his close combat nature, and dark because he eats people and vomits them up onto his enemies. Pretty dark in my opinion. Baron Samedi, dark psychic. Dark for his voodoo-ness and being god of life and death, psychic for his mind-altering hysteria mechanics. You could argue for Ghost, but I would say just because he's a death god doesn't mean he has to be Ghost. I think dark fits Baron much better, personally. Bastet, normal. Pretty basic cat girl that would definitely be a normal type. You could argue for ground as well because of her ultimate's quicksand, but that's a pretty loose argument. I think mono normal fits best. Bologna, fighting steel. Up close and personal fighter that utilizes several different weapons. Definitely fighting in steel. Kavrakan, ground. Destroyer of mountains that can raise walls of earth with heavy references to tectonics, seismology, and tremors, quintessential ground type. You could argue for rock as well, but I think mono ground does him the best justice. Camazos, flying dark. God of bats, uses echolocation in his kit, pretty obvious dark type, and of course, flying. I mean, he's a bat. Cerberus, dark ghost. Lord of the Underworld is probably pretty dark down there, ghost for his many references to souls, death, and spirits. Kononos, grass normal. Strong nature themes, brambles, polymorphs, etc. for grass, and I feel he's normal enough to warrant tacking on normal type as well. There's also the added point of his one being multi-type, similar to the move Tri-Attack, which is a normal type in the Pokemon games. Chak, water electric. God of rain who also has strong storm and electricity themes. Pretty obvious one here. Changa, fairy psychic. She's literally called the fairy of the moon, so pretty obvious choice there, and I went with psychic over dark because despite being associated with the moon, dark type feels wrong for her, and psychic fits much better with her talking jade rabbit. Same typing as Gardevoir, but hopefully with less Rule 34. Charybdis, water dark. She's the ceaseless whirlpool, doesn't get much more water than that, and dark for her mischievous nature and tendency to pull her enemies down into the dark, watery abyss. Chernobog, dark. Could argue for Dark Ghost, but I think tacking on an extra type takes away from him literally being the Lord of Darkness. Mono Dark it is. Chiron, normal grass. Normal for being a pretty standard centaur guy, grass for his herbal poultices and nature associations. Kronos, steel psychic. Steel for his cogs and gears that make up parts of his body, and psychic for the time aspects. There is no time type in Pokemon, but psychic often gets given these features. Cleaner, ghost. She's a banshee, can phase into walls, tears the veil between life and death, can make people unperceive her, passive is literally called phantasmal, one of the most obvious ghost types there is. Cthulhu, dark psychic. Dark for his Lovecraftian horror aspects like the Maya and R'lyeh, and psychic for the mind-altering madness he inflicts on his enemies. Cuchulainn, normal fighting for both of his stances respectively. Pretty normal guy until he becomes a raging, punching, fighting machine. Cupid, normal fairy. Normal for just being a human baby, and fairy for his strong association with love and pink thieves. Daji, steel dark. Steel for her torture blades fetish, and dark for her, well, torture fetish. She has some fairy elements too in the traditional sense of the word, but not really in terms of Pokemon fairies, which are almost exclusively fluffy, pink, or cutesy. Danzaburou. Okay, I'm gonna break the rule I literally just set and say Danza would be fairy because of his light-hearted, mischievous nature and place as a purveyor of good fortune. Discordia. Fairy dark. Fairy for similar reasons to Danza, playful, mischievous, light-hearted, at least in her Smite design, but I'll throw in dark too, as she can be a bit more sinister and chaotic, especially in her real-world lore. Erlang Shen, normal psychic. Normal for obvious reasons, and psychic for his whole third eye, big brain, analyze your strengths and weaknesses type of stuff. Transformation is also loosely tied to psychic types in Pokemon. Eset.
Explosion type XDDDDDDD.
Fafnir, normal dragon. Another stance changer that is pretty normal until he decides he wants to be a dragon for a bit. Fenrir, dark. I feel his nature is very fitting of dark type, and he's the guy that literally plunges the whole world into dark during Ragnarok. Freya, flying fairy. She's queen of the Valkyries who are known to fly or at least have wings, and fairy fits Valkyries pretty well too. Ganesha, fairy. Okay, this is a pretty liberal use of the fairy typing, but I feel his generous, protective, and righteous nature and connections to good fortune are most befitting of fairy typing, if anything. Admittedly, this guy is fairly hard to accurately type though. Geb, rock. Pretty obvious one here, man is literally rocks. What more do you want me to say? Gilgamesh, normal flying. Normal for him being a demigod and pretty much normal man in appearance-wise, and flying for the winds of Shamash and the grace with which he glides through the air before drop-kicking you into next Tuesday. Guan Yu, normal fighting. Normal for him being mortal before being deified, and fighting for being a war god with conviction, warrior's will, stuff like that. Hachiman, steel fighting. Fighting for his battle prowess and steel for his mastery of arms as well as his metal mask. Hades, dark ghost. I mean, come on, Lord of the Underworld who devours souls, shrouds enemies in darkness, pretty clean dark ghost type. Hebo, water. God of the Piss River whose whole idea is throw enough water at you that you die, and if it doesn't work, literally become a wave. What more do you need? Himdallia, steel psychic. Steel for his sword, axe, and epic helmet. Psychic as a way to represent his vision aspects. That's probably the best type for it, even though it doesn't fit perfectly. Hell, dark fairy. Another stance switcher with clean types for both stances. Dark stance is literally called dark, and the best equivalent to the cutesy healing light stance is fairy type. Hera, normal steel. Normal woman, but has a giant metal robot that obliterates people at her command. Clean normal steel type. Hercules, normal fighting. Similar to Achilles, he's a demigod, so half normal makes sense for him, and fighting for his close combat affinity. I'd love to give him rock type for the boulder, but I think these two types override that. Horus, flying. Literal birdman. Could argue for normal as well, but I'm already using normal a lot in this video, and he is literally a bird. Huyi, normal fire. Speaking of overusing normal, standard human with the ability to shoot down 9 suns, anyone? Welcome to the fire squad, Huyi. Hunbats, normal. I don't really see any strong enough associations to other types to give bats anything beyond just being a monkey, which is pretty normal, though the mental damage his voice lines cause to you when you hear them could warrant psychic type.
Do not throw away your hair, fingernails or teeth, because if you don't find them upon your death, you will regret it.
Ishtar, electric. Could also be normal, but again, I don't want to overuse it too much, and she has very strong electricity vibes with Jolt, Rolling Thunder, Storm Shot, etc. Izanami, ghost. She's a zombie, bro. Could also be dark, but I think mono ghost fits best. Giannis, steel psychic. Steel for his body and psychic for the space and time vibes. Jingwei, normal flying, pretty standard human girl who can also grow wings and fly if she wants to. Jormungandr, dragon dark, dragon for obvious reasons and dark for his general aesthetic and ability effects in game. Kali, fighting steel, fighting for her up close and personal killing style and steel for her dual blades that she shreds people with. Kepri, bug fairy, he's the lovable happy scarab that saves your life, nuff said. King Arthur, fighting steel, fighting for the same reason as many of these fighting types, he's just a big boy brawler, and steel for his legendary blade Excalibur. Kukulkan, dragon flying. He's a wind serpent dragon thing, definitely dragon flying. Kumbhakana, normal. Gives major Snorlax vibes, fits best as a mono normal type. Kuzumbo, water. Could argue for a secondary dark typing or something, but I don't think it's warranted really. Lancelot, fighting steel for the same reasons as King Arthur basically. Loki, dark. His mischievous nature and stealth mechanics are very fitting of dark type, and I don't think secondary fighting fits here really, since he has a very sneaky fighting style more fitting of mono dark. Maui, water fighting. His association with islands, fishing, and water alongside his brawling fighting style would make for an interesting type combo. Medusa, poison rock. Poison for her being a snake and having various venomous abilities, and rock of course for her legendary ability to turn anyone who looks upon her face into stone. Mercury, fighting. He's the one punch man, what else did you expect? There's also an argument to be made for secondary flying given some of his wing imagery and high speed, but we'll go with mono fighting for the video. Merlin, a tough one, but I'll go with fire and ice since his arcane stance doesn't have a direct equivalent in Pokemon, though dark is the closest. Fire and ice of course for his other two stances. I think this is also our first ice type in the video. Morgan Le Fay, dark. She's the Dark Enchantress after all, and many of her themes are of betrayal and dark magic. Mulan, fighting steel. For very similar reasons to Bellona, she's an up-close and personal brawler with a mastery of various weapons. Naja, normal fire. There's also an argument for flying here with his ultimate, but being a normal human with fire elements like Flaming Spear and Windfire Wheels makes sense for his secondary fire typing. Neath, normal. Most normal type looking ass I've ever seen. Nemesis, normal dark. Normal for obvious reasons and dark for the blindness aspect. These two types also contrast quite well to represent the scales of justice. Nike, normal flying. Flying is a bit of a stretch here, but she does have wings, so yeah. Nox, dark. Could also be normal too, but to emphasize her pure darkness, it makes more sense to be solo dark type for the goddess of the night. Nuwa. So similar to Merlin, Nuwa deliberately has multiple elements weaved into her design, with wood, earth, wind, fire, and air all being represented. I'll choose fire and flying though to represent her Smite ultimate as best as I can, since we can't really perfectly type Nuwa. Odin, fighting dark, for his combat prowess and association with ravens respectively. You could also argue for psychic for his vision aspects too. Olorun, fire. Another one that would be light type if that existed, but fire is the closest we've got. Osiris, fighting ghost. Fighting for obvious reasons, and ghost for his broken body that was split into pieces and scattered across the land after being murdered by Set. He's also the god of the afterlife for even more ghost themes. Pele, fire rock. You could also argue for ground in place of rock or even electric due to her ultimate volcanic lightning, but I feel fire rock best represents her volcanic ties and magma theme, since magma is quite literally molten rock. Persephone, ghost grass. A pretty cool typing in my opinion, with ghost coming from her underworld themes and ability to travel the plane of death, while grass comes from her plants, vines, and pomegranate seeds. Poseidon, water. Big ocean guy with big ocean kraken and big ocean trident. What's more water than that? Ra, fire. Another one that would be light type as secondary if it existed, but he's god of the sun and constantly shouts about how the light can burn, so I think fire fits him pretty well.
The light can heal, or the light can burn! Okay, it mostly burns.
Raijin, electric. I mean, he's the master of thunder. Pretty simple one here. Rama, normal. Like many hunters, Rama doesn't really match any type super well, so normal it is. Ratatoska, normal fairy. So hear me out here. His mischievous and playful nature along with the bubbly personality warrants fairy in my opinion, and normal just because he's a basic ass squirrel. Raven, fighting dark. Most obvious fighting type of all time pretty much, and dark for his general personality and lore with being a demon that amassed an army of fiends and monsters to conquer the world. Scylla, dark water. Her sinister nature hidden behind a childish facade is very fitting of dark type in my opinion, and she is the horror of the sea after all, so water typing too. Sharing this dual type with Charybdis of course. Serket, poison bug. Poison for her various lingering poisons and bug for her scorpion tail, which while not technically a bug in real life, they are relatives of spiders, and scorpion Pokemon in the games are classed as bugs, so I think it fits. Set, fighting dark. Well versed in close combat and a usurping Kingslayer. This guy is good at fighting and pretty damn dark. Shiva, fire water. So this one might seem a bit weird to give him two kind of special magical typings when he's a bit of a brawler, but I feel the polar opposites of fire and water represent Samsara, and Shiva shifting between states of bliss and destruction, represented by his fire and water respectively. Water is also said to have healing properties too, which is the other aspect of Shiva's ultimate, alongside the fiery damage burst that it can deal. Skadi, ice. Goddess of winter who commands Calder, the winter wolf, creates permafrost, casts piercing cold, and winter's grasp to create blizzards. Quintessential ice type. Sobek, water. Big croc that lurks in the waters and is god of the Nile River. Easy water type. Sol, fire, fairy. Fire for her obvious god of the sun stuff, and fairy for her playful personality. Plus, it makes for a very cool typing combination. Sun Wukong, normal. Similar to Humbats, this guy is just a pretty normal monkey as far as Pokemon types go. Susano, electric flying. So while Susano doesn't fly, he is god of the summer storm and has many wind themes that make him an obvious choice for the flying type, and the secondary focus on electricity and storms in general for the electric type. I think electric flying works great for him. Steel was also in consideration though for his legendary Stormcatter. Sylvanus, grass. He rides a tree, heals, roots, and can literally grow flowers. Definitely a grass type. Terra, rock grass. Rock for her obvious monoliths and stone walls that she can summon and shatter, and grass for her nature themes and healing. Plus, she's the Earth Mother. Thanatos, flying dark. Flying for his wings and ultimate, and dark for being the literal Grim Reaper that sends people to the underworld. Pretty obvious one. The Morrigan, ghost. A strange one, but I feel Ghost represents her ability to change into any form and duplicate herself very well. Of all types, these abilities are more ghostly than anything else. You could also add Dark on there as well for her Dark Omen, but I think Mono Ghost is fine for her. Thor, Steel Electric. Literal god of thunder, so electric is a no-brainer, and I went with Steel for his legendary hammer, Mjolnir. Thoth, flying psychic. So flying cause burb, obviously, and psychic as a way to represent his magic and knowledge aspects, like recording the weaknesses of his opponents in the Book of the Damned. Tiamat, ground flying. So as much as I know I will get tons of hate for making the goddess of the salt sea, not a water type, hear me out on this one. None of her abilities nor her design in Smite really invoke water imagery, and ground flying represents each of her stances really well. Call her lack of water typing a Lugia Easter egg if you want. Tsukuyomi, Dark Steel. Definitely has dark vibes with the whole bending the world to his will and being the god of the moon and all, plus Shingetsu and Mangetsu, his blades, are a great reason to add my favourite typing to him as well. Tyr, fighting steel. Fighting for obvious reasons, and steel both for his sword and his wolf's head gauntlet that covers where he lost his hand to Fenrir. Ula, normal steel. Normal for the same reason many hunters have been normal, but we'll give him steel since he has mastery of both axe and bow. Vamana, fighting. An absolute brawling machine, pure fighting seems best for the big baby. Vulcan, steel fire, god of the forge. What else is there to say? He uses fire to forge steel. Easy. Jibalanke, dark poison. Dark for obvious reasons with his ult that literally blinds everyone by making it pitch black and is called Darkest of Nights, and poison typing for his darts. Jingchen, steel. Only has a helmet where his head should be, fights with an axe and shield, and his ult that is literally called Whirlwind of Rage and Steel. That's enough for me. Yamoja, water. Goddess of rivers, can literally create walls of water out of nowhere and has her entire kit named after and themed around water. Very obvious one here. Ymir, ice. Another obvious one, the literal frost giant who creates ice walls, has ability names like Frostbite, Glacial Strike, and Shards of Ice. As much as Yamoja is water type, Ymir is ice type. Yu Huang, fire dragon. The typing Charizard always wanted, and I guess got in a way, goes to Yu Huang with his strong fire themes in his phoenixes and ultimate that summons two opposing dragons that charge at each other and explode into fire. Zeus, electric. I mean, if there was a womanizer type, he'd be that too, but short of that, he's just a mono-electric type for obvious reasons. And finally, Zhonghui, ghost type. He collects ghostly demons in his big bag and performs exorcisms. Ghost seems reasonable to me for the Demon Queller. And that's every Smite God's Pokemon typing. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. It was a ton of fun to work on, and I feel most of these actually make a ton of sense, and only a few, like some of the hunters, were just basic normal types. Let me know your thoughts down below if any of them should be changed or should have different typing or whatever, and I will catch you guys in another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.